Θα έρθει πήγε να παρκάρει.
Everybody, thank you so much for coming out tonight and joining us in what is really our first event. We've got a lot of competition with World Cup and parking and gate pride. So thank you for ignoring all of that and coming out. Hopefully this will be the first of many events that will help bring us together, bring our children together, bring us together as friends again, so that we can get to know each other and, you know, do some interesting and fun things. This is my son. And for our first event, Peter Tsatsos, a teacher himself, has put together a brief history of Kastoria and our families, I guess, coming over from Kastoria to Toronto. And he's going to do a short presentation tonight. And we hope you appreciate it. And thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Kastoria Society and Suburbs Association, good evening and welcome. Tonight's event is designed to serve as a new chapter in the history of our association. Consider it an invitation to take something with a rich past and carry it into the future. That future is in our hands. Before we consider that, allow me to take you back to the roots of our past and of our association. For 3,000 years, Greeks have been leaving their homeland to create colonies throughout what is modern-day Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. For example, the French city of Marseille was a Greek settlement in 600 BC. Furthermore, the south of Italy was once referred to as Great Grecia, or Megali Elada. Over the last 150 years, immigration of Greeks to Canada, more specifically Toronto, started slowly, but reached record highs in the 1950s and 60s. The first Greek immigrant recorded in the city of Toronto was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Petros Konstantinidis. Records show that he landed here in 1864. Yet there is no real push of immigration until about 1895. Most immigration from the region of Western Macedonia, which you see on the screen, to North America originated from a place called Antarctico. These Greeks found their way through the liberated countries of the Balkan Peninsula and eventually across the Atlantic. The number of immigrants doubled after the Turkish uprising of 1908. The Neo-Turks were fighting back against their government, and in an attempt to keep the peace, they offered people a new constitution. The promise of a return to full human rights was tempting, but many Macedonians could not accept conscription into the Turkish army. As a result, many of them began to escape to the west. Settlement of Greeks in North America was steadily taking place. By 1910, the Kastoria Omonia Silago of New York City had a membership of 2,000. 1 year later, in 1911, the Greek community of Toronto bought a building, church on the first floor and a school on the second. Despite the increase in numbers, conditions were difficult, and these immigrants were not always accepted into Anglo-Canadian culture. The 1930s brought the Depression, but the Greeks persevered, and St. George Church, which you see was on Bond Street, was purchased in 1937. It was a Jewish synagogue before that. By the 1940s, there was about 3,000 Greeks in Toronto. The great wave of immigration was about to begin. Things really began to happen after World War II and the Greek Civil War, which ended in 1949. Greece was decimated. In Western Macedonia, entire villages were wiped out. People lost everything. In Kastoria, Floridina, and Kozani, there was widespread destruction. But amid the devastation, Greeks sought out opportunities which began to arise in North America. For many, work could be found in the fur trade, which had flourished in the region of Western Macedonia since the 1600s. After all, the name Kastoria is derived in part from the Latin word castor, meaning beaver. Furriers had already developed a niche for furs with the elite of great cities like Paris, Constantinople, not Istanbul, Budapest, Bucharest, and Vienna. The demand for the manufacturing of furs would increase steadily after the 1950s, and the effect on the Kastorians in Toronto was direct. During the 1950s and 1960s, the flow of Greek immigrants was well established. Whether it was the ocean liner Queen Frederica, the Olympia, or the Cristoforo Colombo, thousands of Greeks were showing up every 2 weeks in Halifax and New York. Those who landed in Halifax ended up in Montreal, Toronto, or Vancouver. During these years, the church was the place where these new Canadians met. It was here that the talk of an association, or a sílabo, began. The truth of the matter is, they needed each other, emotionally, socially, and financially, to help find jobs, of course. In the early days of 1960, the Kastoria Society in Suburbs was created. Shortly after, the Pan-Macedonian Association was also created. What followed was a generation of dances, youth activities. One more bell. Thank you. Parades, Christmas parties, and Carnavalia. Just to name a few.
Who's that?
They served the community well by making significant contributions to the building of St. Demetrius Church in 1967 and St. John's in 1980. In 1975, Pan-Macedonian Association bought the building that we are standing in today. Our association played a significant role in that as well, with our members making significant monetary contributions. In 2010, our association celebrated 50 years, making it 54 today. So what is the future of our association? Our parents were in their 20s when the association began. What will we do as they begin to move on? Our reasons for gathering together may not be the same, but the history that binds us is undeniable. It's up to us to decide if this history will continue for us and for our children. Let's find a way to create an atmosphere that is welcoming to all, and at the same time, remember our roots. I gathered the majority of the information for tonight's presentation from my father, someone who lived it, a primary source, if you will. But when he repeated it to me, it didn't feel like a history lesson, but rather more like a story. What will become of his stories when he and others have moved on from running this association? Does the story end here, or is it time to start creating our own? With our hectic lifestyles, we all realize that our time is an issue. But consider attending an event, or 2, or 3 per year. This association has the potential to become a small part of everyone's life, while connecting socially, culturally, and in our business dealings. There is a core group that is committed to this. We need your support. Please join us in making this association work for all. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
We gotta get to